I did think about taking a leadership role after watching Reagan, though.
You did?
Yeah. I thought, we don't seem to combine and connect the three of us together. So I was wondering what you guys are up to tonight. Could we
go to see Beetlejuice?
We could? Yeah. Is that a fact?
Yeah, we could.
Is that can't? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm busy.
That sounds about right. Yeah. Do you have actually a memory of Reagan?
Do I have him? Oh, yeah. Well, I mean.
Do you remember him?
I remember him. Yeah, very much so.
Are you sure?
So-
How old were you?
I was 2, but no, I'm kidding. That was that's my early childhood.
You know, like
When were you born?
79.
Okay,
So like his later
yeah.
Later pregnancy?
His later
Yeah.
pregnancy.
Yeah.
His later
had-
presidency.
A later pregnancy with
In
Reagan.
the 3rd trimester. My dad, that's how I talk. That's just what it is.
That's right. Okay, so I have the Kevin Bacon 6 degrees of separation.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 2 degree of separation from Reagan. So when we're opening the Reagan Library, Universal was a big part of that. And my dad was at Universal at the time. And he was one of the main guys in charge of the opening of the Reagan Library with with the Universal component. And so my dad got to meet Reagan. We have and my dad has a picture of it with him and Reagan, and then has a letter signed thanking him for the event. So it's like I've met Reagan.
Yeah.
Almost.
You're related.
Yeah, that's actually more like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just tell people, oh yeah, he's a close personal friend.
Do you have a ranch in Malibu now?
I wish. I wish I'd sell it.
He rides on one of those little miniature horses.
Yes.
Yeah, I only ride the miniature ponies.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it makes me feel bigger.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
I see dead people.
Hasta la vista, baby.
You can't handle the truth!
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Okay, so this week we are doing the newly released Reagan movie that just came, starring Dennis Quaid, Jon Voight, Penelope Ann Miller. It's a sprawling kind of epic that details all of Reagan's life from young age all the way to his presidency and then ultimately his death. Again, he's one of those presidents who's become more popular, I think, since his passing. Both sides of the aisle often use him as an example in regards to just and then when he died, I still remember when he passed, the amount of people that would stop on the 118 freeway as the motorcade was coming through was very visible.
Yeah.
This movie is I think has a lot of different stuff. Again, remember our purpose of our show is to try and point out some key things within the movies. So what's portrayed as good, what's portrayed as bad, what are some of the, are there any Christian values portrayed in the film, and then what's kind of the overall theme and messaging. So let's kind of get into that. What would you guys say is the central message of the Reagan movie? And then maybe how does the movie portray leadership, patriotism through Reagan's life?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the biggest theme that came out is God's plan for your life, and really to make a difference with that. So you see that in a number of quotes throughout the movie, and even the contrast to that, Reagan's dad, Jack, right? And so Reagan, Ronald says to his mom, what about Jack? Does God have a plan for his life? And the idea is like, yeah, but Jack's not, willing to, do that plan type of idea. So I think that's a critical component throughout. Everything is a part of the divine plan. Do something that matters. I want to make a difference. What time I have left belongs to Him. Those are big themes that came through the movie, pretty pronounced.
Yeah, I'd say God's sovereignty I agree with you on that one, is huge. Obviously you kind of mentioned leadership. Leadership is a huge one. And, you see where leadership with kind of this commitment to both his convictions and his faith was a big kind of overall theme that you saw all throughout. You saw how it developed throughout time and how it kind of came to be in the future in his presidency.
Yeah, I think his care for the country,
Right.
His desire to make a difference for the good, to protect from the atheistic communism that was coming up against America. I think even you have his softer side portrayed in the movie as well, of like caring for people, loving people. One of the things, anecdotal from my wife is she shares the same birthday as Reagan, right? And so she's been a Reagan fan.
So just
all
like
her-
me, she's basically related to Reagan as well.
Well, and even
We may be
more,
brother and sister.
even more.
Oh.
She wrote to Reagan, letting him know that she had a same birthday, and he wrote back to her. So she's closer. You know.
Wow. So she actually has. Does she
Yeah.
still have the letter?
She does, yeah.
Wow.
And we've talked about going to the Reagan Library to see if we can find the letter that she wrote him, because all his letters are contained there.
Oh, very
And
cool.
yeah, so and watching it with her, she was just loving it. Like she would have been excellent on this podcast. She's a bigger Reagan fan than I think Reagan was, and and so yeah, I mean, and it was nostalgic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because it was my childhood, you
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
as well, right?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
and so, like, I remember watching MTV and the caricatures of
MT what?
MTV.
MTV.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I was Christian as a kid. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
you
You
had
and your pig and
you had CBC.
that's right.
And so yeah, so there was a lot of just a lot of things that reminded us of what the country was.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the purposes.
I think one of the great things too that demonstrated in his life is you see a care for others all throughout. Like they called him, he was he really wanted to protect people. Back to what you're talking about in regards to his desire, all the way through Screen Actors Guild, governor. It wasn't something he was seeking for power purpose. Is because he, like you said, wanted to do something for others. That's not why people typically go into politics.
Yeah.
Right.
It's usually self-serving.
Yep.
Right.
One thing is how that interesting. My stepsons pointed out, coming from a younger generation, having them watch this movie, they go, "It feels like we're going through all the same things right now."
Right?
Which I was like,
Yeah.
that's actually an excellent observation.
I had the same thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even down to the Iran-Contra affair, which
Yeah.
most people don't know anything about.
Right.
And, it's selling weapons to Iran, who was backing Lebanon, who had up in Hezbollah, or Hezbollah up in Lebanon, who had a bunch of hostages, right? And selling those weapons to send money to, other people fighting against communism.
Yeah.
There was just a lot of like similarities, and the need for a strong leader, I think, was another undertone.
Yeah.
Especially
through.
coming off of the Carter years,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
there was a lack of leadership.
Yeah.
Let's look at what the portrayal of good and kind of noble values. So, what characters' actions in the movie are portrayed as good? Obviously, we know Reagan, right?
Yeah.
But there's others in
And
the film.
Nancy.
Nancy, right?
Yeah, she shined, right? Even the actress, and just a care and love for people, and a willingness to, I think, just be attacked in the political realm, to do what is good. Know that you're going to get personally attacked, especially like Reagan's second term.
Yeah.
He was he just was getting hammered in that reelection campaign, knowing that it was going to be a big deal, and Nancy willing to go through that. You'd have to think that she would be hurt through all of the different things being attacked for him, and just watching that. I think his horse riding Secret Service buddy caring for him. I think those were the two that really popped out, and even I think they even had kind of a positive portrayal of Gorbachev as the communist, atheistic leader of Russia, not wanting to go into a nuclear war.
Even Tip O'Neill, the portrayal of Tip, which again, that's true. Like they would battle it out during the days, and then go in the evenings, go have dinner together.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore, right?
Yeah.
The civility of the office is unfortunately gone.
Yep.
And it's something that would be great to bring back. Okay, let's talk about what's portrayed as evil in the film. Does the film clearly define good versus evil?
I think so.
Yeah, I would agree. I think
yeah.
so too. I mean, obviously, you've got the white hat cowboy,
Oh, yeah.
Reagan,
Oh, yeah.
right? Just like the old westerns.
Uh-huh.
And then you've got Gorbachev,
Yep.
who is
And even the guys before Gorbachev,
Yeah.
which were always in a dark room,
yes,
smoke filled.
all the Russian.
The guys that like died off like boom, 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 boom right after another. And yeah, I think you do have American values, Christianity,
Mhm.
freedom, contrasted with Russia, atheistic communism, greed
Mhm.
for those upper elites. That's very real. And I think in really this kind of insertion to try to change America, not overtly but subtly,
Yeah.
and that deception of infiltrating Hollywood and infiltrating different key parts
Mhm.
that would be, I think, just a mark of deception that and evil tendencies that the movie I think portrayed pretty well.
Yeah.
I'd say the political game was another one within our own politics. Talks
Portrayed as how so?
evil.
Okay.
There, well, actually, you saw both good and evil, right? But we saw like in the first, when he lost his first election, how they were talking about the manipulation that was used by the other side to buy votes. It wasn't about the American people. It was just about winning. And Reagan was very clear that he was there about the people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So you kind of saw the good and evil even within politics presented.
And I think too, one of the key aspects of the movie was Reagan's desire to want to tell the truth.
Yes.
So even when the Iran-Contra affair comes out, his deal is let's just tell the truth. Let's just move forward and do what's right. The one minor thing that I think, well, there's a couple things that I think were a little bit of a challenge for me for the movie. Overall, great, loved it. I think they really didn't get into the Iran-Contra chicanery
Yeah.
and political stuff. Like
Yeah.
there's just a lot
Ollie
there.
North was pretty much just
Yeah. The scapegoat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And so it was just like, he does the right thing. I think there's probably more to the
Sure.
story.
Sure.
But
Wasn't it interesting though what the Russians said about that? They're like, look, what the Americans, all you got to do is go tell the truth and apologize. Everybody forgives you and you move on. There's that one point where they kind
Yeah.
of said that, what
Yep.
they thought was an interesting statement.
I
by
mean,
them.
it's not untrue.
No.
I mean, you look at what Clinton's struggles when at first denied it and then came out and apologized and owned it and forgiven.
All right. See you later.
Yeah.
Again, we are a nation of wanting to give second chances
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
people. And the optimism behind our country feeds that, and I think there's value in that.
Mhm.
And it's one of the reasons why I think our country has been successful.
Yeah.
Is that kind of momentum and attitude.
Yeah.
One of the things that that I was thinking of this morning in my drive-in was one of the key characteristics of Reagan's leadership was thinking through attributes and gentleness.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And oftentimes I think people think of gentleness as contributing to weakness. They're weak, right?
Yep.
And that's not what gentleness is. It's one of the fruits of the Spirit, right? And it's a fruit of the Spirit because you can be strong and firm and bold with gentleness.
Yep.
And I think that that's one of the key ways that Reagan was able to,
Yep.
he had that southern, that aw shucks kind of, charm
Yeah.
Mhm.
that was disarming.
Yeah.
And immediately that you cared about him and he was affable with that. And so,
Yeah, and gentleness can be mistaken as also just being quiet and
Mm-hmm.
just letting things go and right.
Mhm.
But he stood the line, told the truth, but it was very caring.
yeah.
Caring about the individual is
Right.
really what drives a gentle behavior.
One thing that stuck out, a verse that kept popping in my mind. So, Beals, you can correct me when I'm wrong here, but was 1 Corinthians 16:13, where it's like, be strong, act like men.
Yeah.
Like that just kind of seemed, that whole verse seemed to encapsulate and do it all with love.
Yep.
Kind of Reagan. I just kept going back to that verse and thinking through that because it's like, that really was Reagan. Everything he did all these things, be courageous, act like men, stand firm in the faith. But he did it all with love. That kind of kept popping into my head as I was watching the movie.
Okay, I want to get into. There's a couple lines in the
Yep.
film
Mhm.
that kind of stuck out to me, and I want to talk about. So there's a moment when young Reagan, Dutch, asks his mom, "Are we God's people?" And she replies, "Well, anybody can be God's people, so as long as they choose Him." So let's talk about that one first.
Yeah, well, there's a host of problems with that, but so at the I think overall arch of things, the conversation of God's people must include Israel, right? And at the same time, we can be considered God's people. The scripture twisting in the movie, I think, or at least misapplying in significant ways, one of the marks down on it, I think, just personally. But I didn't really expect a exposition of
Sure.
Solomon's prayer in Second Chronicles, because that's really what that comes from, right? It's that God's people, and then what you see is like he writes a key verse, and that key verse is repeated multiple times. And here it is: "My people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their evil ways, then I will listen from heaven, I'll forgive their sin, and I'll heal their land," right? And that was kind of the conjunction of that. So you have that issue of just poor hermeneutics of thinking through, like, what's that verse talking about? Who is it addressing? What is the stipulations? The Mosaic Covenant, breaking the Mosaic Covenant, like all those things. There's a lot there to unpack.
Yeah.
So not properly looking at Scripture. The other thing that it deals with is, the issue of election, and not election in terms of electing a president, but election in terms of God choosing.
Right.
And we choose him. And there was a lot of man's ability to do things. So for instance, God has a plan, but you have the ability to just totally reject God and do your own thing. And God will let you be his people if you choose him. So there's some theological things that, we could talk about, but that would take us in a whole different direction.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so those are some key issues. And I think too, it's just when you approach Scripture with the proper hermeneutics of understanding what the author intended, then you have a really good base to apply Scripture, to move it into practice. Picking and choosing Scripture to kind of craft a narrative of what you want is a really dangerous model to, and though Reagan's my favorite president of my lifetime, and certainly would be on my Mount Rushmore of presidents. But that part, I think, was just, it was sad to see the way that Scripture was handled in the movie.
Yeah.
One more thing, as we kind of get ready to wrap up here. There's a scene where Reverend George Otis kind of gives Reagan a prophecy. And this, I've been told by the producers, of which I know I should probably mention that, but said that this actually happened. That he was told by that Reagan was given this prophecy: "If you continue to walk uprightly before me, you will dwell at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue."
It doesn't shock me.
Yeah.
I think, Reagan was very close with the broader evangelical realm, much like Trump, right? And so you look again, our contemporary politics is very similar. You have some charismatic.
Yeah, I think he was close with some Pentecostal preachers
Yeah.
and whatnot. So yeah.
And even in the movie, they kind of hint at they didn't really believe it, but hey.
Because he even says later to Nancy, "Well, you always thought he was a kook," and she says, "Yeah, I still do."
Yeah,
but
yeah, just because it's a it could be a coincidence,
right? Totally.
So that again, you go into the issue of
They're trying to use
prophecy?
it as a movie moment, type of thing.
Totally.
But
But it's not shocking. Like, it wouldn't shock me if that happened, and,
Right, sure.
and that people were like, you're God's
destined.
man
Yeah.
of the hour.
Right.
God has raised you up for this very moment.
which
type of thing.
which could be true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but it's not prophetic.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Yeah.
So awesome. Thanks, guys.
Well, yeah, I enjoyed the movie and love Reagan,
Yeah.
and would wish we would have a president who would be similar.
Well,
Yeah.
And the two producers, John Sullivan and Mark Joseph, who spent a long time trying to get this. I met them. I met John when they were first trying to get this thing off the ground, and that was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it speaks to their fortitude and
Yeah.
their perseverance to
Yeah.
get this movie made. And you can see why a lot of people in Hollywood wouldn't want to get it, wouldn't want
Totally.
it to get made.
Totally.
Which is sad. So.
Yeah. But it was a great movie.
Thank you for listening to Real Profs, a production of the Center for Thinking Biblically. To support this ministry, please visit thinkbiblically.org/donate. To learn more about the Masters University on-campus and online undergraduate and graduate programs, visit masters.edu.